Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about 6 types of toxic, unhealthy father-son relationships. In this video, I'm not here to talk bad about your father. I'm not here to demonize your father. I'm not here to criticize or blame your father for anything. I'm not doing this video to make you hate your father or for you to create bad feelings towards your father. I am not telling you in this video that your father do not love you. I am not saying that your father should be a perfect father. I am not trying to make you feel shame or guilty about the relationship that you have with your father. This video is just to bring awareness of the types of toxic father-son relationships so that you can recognize what type of relationship you have with your father, and that after you hear this, you can heal and you can be better. This video is also to help you, if you want children, to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes as your father. It is for you to recognize the effects of the relationship that you had with your father and how it's affecting you, how it had affected you, and how to heal, right? So let's begin. So one of the first toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship is if your father was absent. Absent dad. Why? Maybe because your parents had a divorce. Your father passed away. Your father went to jail. Your father left the country, left the state to work. Maybe there was infidelity in the relationship with him and your mother. Maybe your father was abused by your mother in some way. Maybe your father was just overwhelmed with the role of being a father and he left. Could be any one of these reasons. Maybe your father had you out of marriage and he didn't really like your mother and he neglects you, right? That could also be the reason why your father is absent. There could be many reasons. Those are some. And this affects you growing up because you have a greater risk of suffering from physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional neglect, sexual abuse, because he's not there. Your mother, for example, could be verbally abusing you or physically abusing you because of the strain of the absence of your father and not being able to take care of you properly because she has work and many other issues and problems to deal with, and she probably is neglecting you emotionally, abusing you physically, verbally abusing you, and so on. And also, you have a higher chance of experiencing anxiety or depression when you get older. You could also be having suicidal thoughts. You have a higher chance of being unemployed, of having a low income, of experiencing homelessness when your father is absent. As also, when you grow up, you have a higher chance of getting divorced also, getting a divorce. You might also be having children outside of marriage, and any partnership you're having children and you're not married. Because of lack of guidance and the absence of your dad, all of these things could be happening to you, and you have a higher risk of these things happening to you. You could be feeling abandoned by your father. You could experience low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, bad self-concept. You lack self-compassion due to lack of love, lack of attention, lack of guidance. He's not there. All of these things could be a possibility for you. You could experience all of these things. Higher chance of experiencing all of these things. You could drop out of school because he's not there. You could start using drugs, alcohol. You could end up in jail because you might involve yourself in violence and crime because he's not there to guide you, to support you, to protect you. You might be having multiple children. Again, you might be promiscuous. You might be growing up poor because he's not there to provide for you. You could also be struggling with your emotions. You would have difficulty with relationships, with socializing. You would have problems with school. Reading would be a problem. Mathematics. Your thinking skills, your reasoning skills would be really low. You would be less likely to attain academic and professional qualifications because of having an absent dad. You're more likely to leave school by 15, 16. It starts to get really tough and it starts to look and seem like school is useless, and you might drop out because of lack of support, lack of protection, lack of guidance, because your father is not there. Right? You could become delinquent, get yourself involved in crime, violence, be promiscuous, and getting girls pregnant, having sex at an early age, contracting STDs, AIDS. You might think about running away from home. You might run away from home. Those are the effects of having an absent dad. You have a higher chance of experiencing any one of these when your dad is absent. You need guidance, you need support, you need protection, and you need your father to provide for you. So when he's not there, you have a higher chance of experiencing all of those. Now, the second toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship could be if your dad is strict, controlling, harsh, cruel. Controlling father. Strict. If you have a father like that, you learn through reward and punishment. He might spank you, he might hit you when you do something wrong, when you make a mistake. And when you follow the rules and you be good according to his guidelines, he would reward you. Having a controlling and a very strict father means that he has high expectations for you. He is very demanding and he has high standards for you. He teaches you to have self-discipline and responsibility and accountability. Just because he's afraid of being seen as incompetent is not necessarily because he cares about your feelings. He just don't want you to make mistakes, so he can look good and can show that he's a competent dad and he could feel good about himself. Your father is more concerned about his feelings and not really how you feel. Your father, if he's controlling and strict and harsh, there's also a possibility he is cold, unresponsive, and just unsupportive of you. What he's focused on is the rules and the guidelines that he wants you to follow. Other than that, there is no support. He's unresponsive to your emotions. He don't allow you to have your own opinions, your own ideas, your own perspectives. He does not allow you to question his decisions or rules. You just have to follow what he says. Right? Having a controlling, strict, harsh father, most of the time, your academics is the most important thing. How you're doing in school, that is a big priority. And he judges his effectiveness as a father based on your grades, based on your success, based on your performance in school. Right? He expects you to be obedient, to conform, and to respect him always. And he does that by being harsh and by punishing you when you don't follow and you make a mistake and you don't meet up to his standards. He uses harsh words. He shames you to discipline you. Your punishment is really harsh if you violate his rules, right? He don't allow you to question anything, question his authority. You have to blindly follow his expectations and what he says to do, right? And this could affect you, obviously, because you would grow up having low self-esteem. You would have problems controlling your own emotions. You could have mental health problems. You could be an unhappy child. You would be more prone to depression and anxiety. You could have suicidal thoughts. Also, having a controlling, strict, harsh, cruel dad can make you become rebellious, angry, aggressive, impulsive, delinquent. And you're like this because you see his behavior and you learn from his behavior, and you behave in a forceful way, a harsh way. You're demanding, and you also behave in a threatening way because that is the behavior you see that he's doing with you, right? You, with all this pressure and with all these demands, you could constantly be thinking to run away, that you want to run away from home. You would lack self-confidence, obviously, because your father is always telling you what to do. You have no room to make your own decisions. You would worry if you're gonna make a wrong decision, if you're gonna make a mistake, because sometimes he's probably a perfectionist. And when you make mistakes, you get harsh punishments. So you're not likely to get out your comfort zone or try new things. You could also go to drugs and alcohol and be in gangs to escape this relationship with your dad. You would have difficulty regulating your emotions. You have poor social skills because most of the time when he's communicating with you, it's harsh and it's to discipline you and not really to connect with you. Also, you could become an actor. You behave well at home, but in different environments, when your father is not around, you are a different person. You could become good at lying and hiding things because you want to avoid getting in trouble. You want to avoid being punished. You want to avoid being scolded at, being yelled at if you make a mistake, so you lie and you hide things. You could also become a bully because you learn to use force, you learn to use power over others, because that is how he behaves with you. You are mirroring your father's behavior. That is how you learn to communicate, to be forceful and to be harsh and to be controlling, and you communicate like that with others, and you would have problems. Third, toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship is if your father is a narcissistic dad. You were raised by a self-centered, arrogant, competitive man. You would always feel like you're not good enough if you have a narcissistic dad, because he would also be a perfectionist. So nothing you do would be enough. He sees you as an extension of himself. He doesn't see you as a separate individual with own feelings and own thoughts. He becomes overly involved in your life, in your education, in your activities, in your dreams, overly involved, micromanaging your life. And also, he's constantly criticizing you, controlling you. If you make a mistake, he belittles you, he shames you, he makes you feel guilty, he makes you feel like you're a bad person. He makes you feel guilty. There's no room for you to be vulnerable. There's no room for you to make mistakes. And with that, on the outside, in public, He's bragging about your achievements. But at home, he's not paying attention to you. He's not meeting your emotional needs. He would brag about you to his colleagues, to his friends about your achievements. But at home, he's cold and he's not paying attention to you. That could be really confusing as a child. Your father may bully you and compete against you in games or in sports. And you are a child, obviously, you might not win, but he is competing with you to win games and to win sports with you. He may be jealous. When your mother gives you attention, he's jealous. He's also trying to talk to your girlfriends to get attention. That is having a narcissistic dad. Narcissistic father, they do not have empathy for you. They are very rigid. You have to follow the rules. And you have to follow everything that he says. He will force your opinion. He will force his opinions, his views, his perspective, his personality. He's forcing his ideas on you just to get his way. And with that, he could be physically absent sometimes because he could be working a lot. And he also could be emotionally distant because he is always wrapped up in his work, in his addiction, in his own pleasures. And to give you attention, he acts like that is a burden. To show interest in your hobbies, in your activities, that is like also a burden to him. And it's like not important to him. And you can see that and you can feel that. However, he provides for you on a material level. You have food, you have shelter, you have clothing. He would allow you to get medical care and all of these, a space in school and everything like that, but neglects you emotionally. When you are stressed, when you are going through problems, he would shame you and he would belittle you. He can also be physically cruel with you, with all of that, gaslighting you and being cruel physically with you. That's how a narcissistic dad looks. That's how a narcissistic dad looks. And it can affect you, obviously, the effects of having a narcissistic dad. Well, you feel helpless. You feel helpless and you feel powerless as an individual. You constantly feel humiliated. You feel inferior. You feel shame and unloved. You feel like you're not good enough. You feel shame to have a father like that. And you feel shame and you feel guilty because you actually want to feel loved and you want to feel cared about as an individual. And having a narcissistic dad can cause you to become angry, aggressive, rebellious, and passive aggressive while growing up because you're not getting the love that you need. You have a higher chance of suffering from anxiety and depression when you get older. You constantly think that you are inadequate. You think that you are a burden to him. You think that you cannot measure up to his expectations. Obviously, he's a perfectionist. You feel unworthy of love. You feel unworthy of attention, of affection. You feel unworthy of compassion. And you think that it's your fault that you're not getting your emotional needs met. You can't see that is not your fault. You do not know that your father is, you might not know that your father is a narcissist. You think it's your fault. Sometimes we are young Our brain is not fully developed enough to understand the dynamics of relationships and how our parents should be with us. And we think everything is our fault. And you feel unworthy, like you're not good enough. When you have a narcissistic father, when you have a narcissistic parent, and you grow up and you learn how to be self-sufficient, you are very independent and you're very guarded. You devalue dependency. You're an island. You do not want to depend on anybody. You want to take care of everything yourself, and that could be very problematic growing up. You would also have problems with romantic relationships, being really independent and trying to resolve everything on your own. You could constantly feel a drive to achieve, to be successful, just because you want his approval, you want his validation. But even when you succeed, you get success, you achieve, it's hollow. You feel like it's not good enough, and it would never be good enough for your father, nor for yourself. Having a narcissistic father breaks down your self-confidence, and it breaks down your self-esteem, because you're constantly being criticized. You constantly have to follow what he's saying. He's putting his personality on you. You will be losing your identity. You would not have confidence in yourself. Also, you could feel lonely. You may feel inner loneliness due to growing up with a father who is distant, who is also controlling, and who has created a lot of emotional turmoil within the relationship, and who just lacks closeness with you. Right? So those are the effects of having a narcissistic father. Fourth toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship could be your father is emotionally unavailable, emotionally distant, emotionally absent. Why he might be like this? Well, maybe because his father was the same and he's like that with you. Maybe your father experienced child abuse. Maybe your father had a really traumatic childhood and he is emotionally unavailable. And this is not to make an excuse for your dad. It's just so you can see the dynamic, and you could see how this comes about, how he could be like this, or why he's like this, so you don't repeat the same cycle. Right? Having an emotionally unavailable dad looks like when your father provide all material things for you. Right? He prioritizes material things. He provide food, clothing, shelter, and all of these things, but neglects you emotionally. He would focus more on his job, on his work, over raising you, over you. He avoids emotional conversations with you. He avoids physical affection with you. He doesn't hug you. There's not a safe space for you to discuss your feelings, to create a connection. When your father is emotionally unavailable, he could sometimes withhold affection, withhold love, withhold approval, withhold validation for your feelings and your experiences. And also, your father could be more friendly with neighbors, with strangers, and not with you. That could be very confusing as a child. Having an emotionally unavailable father means that he's probably always busy busy watching TV, busy on his phone, busy walking, busy on the computer, busy, no time to connect with you, no time to reason with you, no time to talk with you, always busy. Having an emotionally unavailable father means that he minimizes your feelings, he avoids emotional connection with you. He could be blaming you for everything. He refused to be accountable for his behavior. Maybe he's not even sure he is emotionally unavailable. He lacks enthusiasm for your interests, for your hobbies. He's not asking you about your hobbies, about your interests. He does not pay attention to your unique personality. He ignores your requests for attention, for love, for connection, for acceptance. Emotionally unavailable father, they do not say that they love you, they do not say that they care about you, they do not make you know that they will be there for you no matter what. They most of the time they prioritize their work other than you and the family. Their work most of the time comes first, which is okay, but as a man, your work could come first, your career and building finances is okay. But when it's constant and when it's extreme and it's always like that, then there's a problem, and that is what I'm talking about here in this video. Right? This could affect you. You could feel rejected. You could feel abandoned constantly. You feel like you're not good enough. You're wondering why you're not getting the love you need. You think that something is wrong with you. You think it's your fault. You are not being loved by your father. You could develop low self-esteem. Same things happen. Low self-esteem, lack self-confidence, low self-worth, being constantly rejected, not having reassurance, not having support could really damage your self-esteem and your self-confidence. You would shy away from challenging work. You would not believe in yourself. You would not believe in your capabilities. Also, when you have a emotionally unavailable father, you could become really angry and you could become really aggressive growing up. You could also go to drugs. You could also go to alcohol to escape this feeling of emptiness, this feeling of abandonment, this feeling of being unloved. You feel like you're not worthy, so you could go to drugs and alcohol. You grow up and you have problems with trust issues. You could be overprotected of yourself with women in romantic relationships. You would fear intimacy. You would have problems with your love life. You would have a really difficult time maintaining long-term relationships because of not receiving the love from your father, the support and the guidance. We acknowledge that our father could be really busy because he is the provider and he's the protector of the home. Yes, our father could work long hours, and that is normal, and that is okay. We might see him less, and that is normal. Yes, our parents, our father, they have issues, they have problems, they have a lot of pressure, they have a lot on their plates, and yes, we might not see them as much. But in this video, what I'm saying is just providing shelter and food and clothing and a place in school and medical attention is not enough. We as children, you need emotion, you have emotional needs, and if they're not met, there's problems, right? So when it's constant and it's excessive neglect from your father, it creates problems. You internalize this rejection. You think it's your fault that you're not receiving love. You think it's your fault that you're not receiving attention. Growing up, you don't feel smart, you don't feel attractive, you don't feel worthwhile, you don't feel lovable as a male. You can isolate yourself. That's one way. Or some, they get angry. You can also look to the opposite sex to feel worthy, to feel love. And then you get women pregnant and you contract STDs because of your father not being there for you emotionally. And you are going through many things on your own. And you are looking to your peers for support and guidance, and our peers sometimes experiencing the same thing of not having their father there. And all of you are lost and misguided. You have low self-worth. You fear failure, no confidence in yourself. You fear standing out. You fear being alone. You fear being around others. You don't know who you are. Basically, you don't believe in yourself and you don't have confidence. You lack self-awareness. You do not know your emotions. You do not know how to control your emotions. You are scared to step out. You are scared to try new things because he is not there to guide you through your emotions, to help you to understand your emotions. And I'm not saying that your father, you as a male and men should be all emotional. Obviously not. But there comes a time when you need guidance in understanding your emotions and knowing how to control them, so you don't get aggressive and too angry. And yes, as a man, anger and aggression is normal, but sometimes it gets out of hand. You could feel really alone and betrayed by your father, and you turn to drugs and you turn to promiscuity. Right? Those are the effects of having an emotionally unavailable father. Next type of toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship is if your father is abusive. Abusive dad. Physically, he probably hit you. He slap you. He cut you. He drag you. He tie you to object. He punch you. He kick you. He choke you. He stab you. He withhold food from you to punish you. He withhold medical attention from you to punish you. He break your bones, whatever. That's physical abuse. He could be verbally abusing you, yelling at you, putting you down, belittling you, calling you names, using words to dominate you, to ridicule you, to degrade you, to assault you. Basically, abusing you emotionally with words, and that would have a very negative impact on your psychological health. And also you could experience sexual abuse from your father. And being verbally abused, physically abused, sexually abused could affect you. You could feel inadequate growing up. You would be also more prone to anxiety and depression. Same things are coming up for all of these toxic father-son relationships. You might grow up and you abuse your children. You abuse your son. Also, you would have a difficulty with personal relationships, with communicating with others, and have problems with social skills. Being abused physically and verbally constantly, and experiencing sexual abuse. Obviously, you would have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, low self-worth. You think bad about yourself. You will be unable to control your emotions. You could get angry and aggressive again. Not being able to control your emotions, to control your behavior. because you are being abused physically. You're being beaten, you're being dragged, you're being slapped, you're being verbally abused, belittling you, talking down to you, making you feel inferior in a degrading way, talking to you in a degrading way, sexually abusing you. You could experience chronic pain for no reason. You could go to alcohol, you could go to drugs, you could harm yourself, you could have post-traumatic stress disorder. You could be having problems in school, you are slow in school, you could be crying all the time, you could be having destructive behavior towards yourself, you could injure yourself, you could want to run away from home, you run away from home, you are cruel, you are hostile in school, you become a bully. Many things can happen to you when you have a father that is beating you, verbally abusing you, bringing you down, belittling you, or sexually abusing you. And the sixth toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship would be your father is an addict. Your father is addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol. Growing up, you saw a lot of alcohol containers around in your home. You witnessed your father drinking excessively or using drugs. Your father had angry outbursts to you. Your father might just be irritable always. Your father might not be involved in family activities. He might not come to your events. Your father could be unable to take care of himself, take care of his wife, take care of you because of this addiction to drugs and to alcohol. You have a very high chance to experience emotional neglect, to experience physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse. If you have a father that is addicted to drugs and alcohol, it's very high that you could experience sometime all of these. Your household, your home is a very dangerous place if your father is addicted to alcohol and drugs. Men could be very aggressive and violent because they have more testosterone and it is elevated when they use drugs. And it affects you. You could be performing bad in school, you're slow in school, you're failing. You have sleep disturbances, you have eating problems, you lose appetite, self-esteem problems. You are stressed, your home is stressful environment, you have stress as a child. You would also have to take up responsibilities that you should not be taking up because you're a child, because your father is not in a state to take care of you, so you have to start to take care of yourself. Start to do many things to help your mother take care of other siblings. Growing up, you would have a higher risk, a higher chance of being depressed and getting anxiety. You might also go and experiment with drugs, alcohol at a very young age. And you could also become an addict yourself even in childhood, growing up, and as an adult. You are growing up and you think that something is wrong with you, and you think it's your fault that you're not getting the love and the attention. You think it's your fault that your father is drinking and smoking constantly. You think it's your fault. And you grow up and you have problems in almost all of your relationships. Okay, so how to heal? This advice, these tips will depend on your age, It would depend on if you live with your father or not, if you don't live with them. All of the tips and advice depends on your age and the type of relationship you have with your father and whether or not you want to work on this. Okay, so what can we do? What can you do to have a better relationship with your father? Or maybe you might decide to not have a relationship. Or what can you do to be better, to feel better, to heal? One thing you could do is seek support, counseling, therapy. You might need professional help according to how bad this relationship is. If you are extremely sad, anxious, irritated often, isolating yourself, you have difficulty making decisions, your sleep pattern change, you have eating disorders, you are probably getting depressed, anxiety, you might need professional help. Going to therapy and getting professional help, counseling or whatever, give you the opportunity to explore your past and have a better understanding of your life today with your father and your relationship with yourself and the relationship with your father. So going to therapy would help you to create healthy boundaries, would help you to communicate effectively with your father and help you to cope with these negative feelings and difficult emotions that has developed within the relationship with you and your father. Next thing you can do is set boundaries. Your father cannot suddenly change and become a better father in one day. You might need to distance yourself. So when you set boundaries, you might need to say what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. For example, you might need to limit contact. You might decide that you are seeing him once a week and you have to communicate clearly and respectfully to him and stand firm with what you say, even if he pushes back, even if he disagrees with you. Doing these things would not be easy. I'm not saying that this relationship or trying to heal or trying to make your relationship better with your father is going to go smooth. It might not go smooth. You might have a lot of misunderstandings and fights, trying to set boundaries and trying to change and maybe trying to distance yourself from him. Next thing you can do is seek emotional support from a different family member. Seek motivation to stick to the boundaries that you probably want to set with him. You need support to deal with these difficult problems, to deal with these issues, right? You might need to talk to a trusted family member or a friend that you trust to help, to support you, to help you go through this difficult situation with your father. I know as a man, you want to take things up for yourself and you want to resolve everything on your own, and you might need support with this. Next thing you can do is focus on yourself. You would need to talk good to yourself, especially if you have narcissistic dad, controlling dad. You or your father verbally abused you, belittling you, bringing you down, devaluing you, making you feel inferior. You would have to get that voice of your father out of your head and talk to yourself positively. You need to work on your personal issues, your childhood baggage, your trauma that has been created by this toxic relationship that you had with your father. You need to reflect on what happened and reflect on who you have become. Deal with your insecurities, and obviously you might be able to do this by yourself or you can get help. So you need to focus on yourself. You can also access a better male role model. You might need to find a different role model. Maybe there's an uncle, maybe there's your grandfather. It could be a better role model. Maybe your teacher, a male teacher or a coach, could be a better role model for you. Next thing you could do is to, if you evaluate the situation and you have good judgment and discretion to know if you're going to remove yourself completely from your father, and that will depend on your age and if you live with them or not. It's okay to let go of our parents, especially if it's causing us mental health problems. Other thing you can do is to, maybe you don't want to completely end the relationship. You could try to heal together. You and your father come together and try to repair the relationship and to work on the relationship. And if you're going to do that, both of you have to listen to each other's feelings, listen to each other's emotions. You have to accept the feelings of your father, and your father have to accept your feelings. And hearing your father's feelings, you might not be agreeing with how he feels. You might not be in agreement with his perspective of the relationship, but you just have to accept each other's feelings. And both of you have to understand the situation from both sides. You need to have an unbiased understanding, unbiased perspective, unbiased look on the situation, right? You need to put yourself in your father's shoes. Your father needs to put himself in your shoes to understand the situation, right? Both of you might need to apologize to each other and then change. You don't apologize and you continue with the same behavior. You apologize and you change for the future. You will also have to keep having discussion, keep communicating, because this will take a lot of time to heal and to have a better relationship. It's not going to happen in 1 month. It is going to take years. You also need to practice self-care. You might need to journal, you might need to meditate, you might need to start eating healthier, exercise. Maybe you like art, maybe you like music, maybe you like sports. You need to relieve stress and frustration from this relationship. So you have to focus on yourself. Sometimes we need to not focus on our parents and focus on ourselves. We cannot change our parents, you cannot change your father unless he wants to change for himself. Most of the time, they are not going to change. Don't try to change them. Sometimes we believe that we can educate them and we can show them ways how to change, and sometimes it's just impossible. They are not going to change. Most of the time, we should try to accept people for who they are and just focus on the things that we can control about ourselves and focus on ourselves to be better, and change our own life and focus on ourselves, right? So I'm not saying that you should never have arguments with your father, that there are never misunderstandings in family. Of course, it's inevitable. Problems and misunderstandings and arguments are inevitable in family. It happens in our family. Conflict is common. Conflict is a normal thing in family and relationship. Some families can repair and move forward. Sometimes the relationship is just permanently damaged. It's gone too far and you have to separate yourself. If you have lost the relationship with your father, it's okay, especially if you had to take care of your mental health. It is really sad to lose your parents, right? But it is normal to have to move away from relationship and cut off communication and communicate with them less to protect yourself, right? This video was not to talk bad about fathers. it was not to demonize your father, criticize your father, blame your father for the relationship. This video was not to make you hate your father, have bad feelings towards your father. I'm not telling you in this video that your father do not love you. Your father could love you, but maybe the role of being a father was way too overwhelming and he had to leave and you got abused when he was not there, or he just wasn't mentally prepared to have you. I'm not trying to make you feel shame or guilty about the relationship that you have with your father. The purpose of this video is to create awareness, to say, hey, your father might be like this and it's affecting you like this, and hopefully you don't make the same mistakes when you have children. Right? I may not have mentioned all the toxic, unhealthy father-son relationship in this video. This is just a few that I believe are the most popular. And I hope this video helps. I hope that you work on yourself and try to heal the relationship with yourself and with your dad. Right? That's all I have, and see you in the next video.